So hello everyone to yet another episode of the podcast that's called In the World of Presentations with 356 Labs. I'm kind of coming up with words in a bit, like it is not that easy to come up with words for this current episode, for this one right now, because to be honest, I don't even know which number this episode will be. The reason why I'm saying that is because that's not the typical episode. This time, we are doing something completely different. This time, actually, we are bringing someone from outside of the company and outside of our company to be our guest. And we have a special one for this episode. The day with us is going in the next 20 or 30 minutes. Mark Bowden will be with us. He is, how can I say it simply, Mark? One of the best, if not the best, how can I say it? One of the most renowned body language experts in the world. And Mark was so willing to join and share some of his experience with us today. So Mark, I don't know whether or not that was the best intro for you, but maybe
Sounded
that's
great.
why. Maybe that's why I will kind of give it to you and say, hey, why don't you tell us a few words about?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language, and I help people all over the world stand out, win trust, and gain credibility every time they speak. So I travel all over the world delivering training, keynote speeches. I've written 4 books on human behavior and body language. I make videos, all to give people the really clear skills of exactly what to do with their nonverbal behavior and the context of their presentations in order to win trust immediately, to stand out for their audience, and to have credibility whenever they're delivering their message, really by not what they say, but what happens around what they say. So I hope that makes sense to you, Boris.
Yeah, I believe it makes sense, not just for me, but for everyone who's going to listen to this one. And we just talked that you were recently the keynote speaker of an event for Gartner. Was that?
Yeah, so Gartner have symposiums all over the world where they gather together CIOs, chief marketing officers as well. Yeah, anybody who needs to and is in charge of tech and large technical budgets as well, and digital strategies. They do that all over the world, and I've spoken at Gartner Symposiums in many, many places, in the US, in India, in Europe, in Spain. And this time I was speaking with Gartner research clients in Toronto, in Canada, the first time they've had a symposium in Canada. So people who I think your audience would be well used to, technical people who are having to get their message across at often a board or executive team level in order to, again, win trust and credibility. So I did an hour's keynote for them.
Yeah. So that one, by the way, I think that you won't mind sharing it in the podcast notes. I'll put it in the show notes afterwards so that people can see it. Highly recommend it for everyone and to everyone who is into the world of presentations and public speaking, because you shared quite some really cool things in there. That being said, you know that we are also fans of the content that you produce, and especially I think that we have to mention to the audience that's going to listen to this episode at some point in the future, because we are recording it in June 2019, but that episode may live on the internet for I don't know how many years from now. So you have some really cool online courses which are on the truthplane.com website, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to truthplane.com and you hit, so Truthplane is TRUTHPLNANE, truthplane.com. Go there and look at online learning, and there's lots of video content there that you can get hold of. Or go to my YouTube channel. Just check out Mark Bowden on YouTube, and there's lots of great video content there as well.
Okay, so enough spam. Enough spam, let's say. So Mark, you do so much consulting. You do a lot of training with companies of all sizes, companies of all industries, right? There are no filters in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I spend a lot of time with many different organizations.
Okay, so if we have to talk, and you're seeing a lot of people in the same way as we do, however, you're seeing them, I believe, from a kind of a different perspective that maybe we see them. You're seeing, and I believe you spend a lot of time and focus in the nonverbal communication, the nonverbal part, teaching them how to kind of win the trust only with their bodies and only through the nonverbal. What do you see? By the way, let's start from here. Do you see people caring enough, let's say, about that in first place?
Well, luckily for my clients, they don't hire me accidentally. So I think the people who I meet, they absolutely do care. They have noticed. They do understand that regardless of the data that you're trying to get across or the ideas that you're trying to get across to your audience, if they don't trust you, if they don't feel you're credible, they won't make the data and information trustworthy and credible. So you've got to fix or certainly work on the frame around your content, not just your content. So absolutely. The people I work with understand that. The people I don't work with, well, hopefully they'll come to understand that. And listen, people come to understand it often by realizing that they're not getting the results that they want from the presentations, pitches that they're making. And they keep going back and changing the content, and it doesn't make things any better. So they've gone as far as they can in terms of how they can create better content, better design around that content, better wording, all of the stuff that's really important and absolutely does work. They've gone as far as they can go with that, and they're still not getting the level of results that they're looking for. And that's often when they'll contact me, is that they realize that it has to be something else other than the content that's creating the block to getting what they want from the audience.
Yeah, as we like to say, if you kind of carefully analyze the normal business presentation, it has like three components: the story, like what you say; the design, if you're using slides, how they look; and the delivery. And in the delivery, there are so many things that have to be taken in mind and taken care of. But we always say, hey, all of those three things have to play in perfect sync. Otherwise, you are kind of vulnerable, and you're putting in a position, especially for an important presentation, where you don't want to be in that place. Like, you don't want to risk that much sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I'd say about that is that those three things really go into what's the story that the audience make in their head about you, your content, your product, your service, your idea, whatever it is. There's the story that you're trying to get across, but then there's the story that comes up in people's heads, the judgments that they make about you. And their main system for making judgments about you as a person is your nonverbal communication. They judge your feelings and intentions towards them based on your behavior, not on what you say. They also judge your content for them, your product, your service, your pitch, your ideas, your leadership for them, based on their idea about you. So what I think of your product is framed by what I think about you, and what I think about you is framed by your behavior, not by what you say. So it's no good you giving me the data that you have a great product and service, because I'm making up my idea of your product and service based on how you walked in the room, how you presented to me, the way you moved, the context that you were in, your tone of voice, the way you handled the objects around you, everything other than what you said.
Yeah, and from what I know from you, and normally but especially in the last few months, from consuming, let's call it, consuming what you teach, is that all of those things are sometimes very quick for the audience to come up with. Like, they judge very quickly, and the judgment part is so quick and sometimes unconscious that if you don't do some things right, you have a problem without you even understanding why that problem actually happened.
Right, absolutely. So it's as fast as, if some science would tell us, it's as fast as about 1/5 of a second.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it's very, very fast. So, how quickly do you respond to the idea that there's a snake near your feet? You respond pretty quickly. It's the same system being used in order to decide, is that presenter a benefit or a risk for us? And therefore, is the data that they're delivering to us a benefit or a risk? And we're not computing that cognitively. We're doing that unconsciously.
Yeah. Is that happening in the amygdala part of the brain? What is this?
Yeah, so I split the brain into three parts. It's called the triune brain system. It's a model of the brain. It means it's not particularly accurate because obviously your brain isn't in three parts, but it's a good way to think about it. And in my model, we have the brain stem, which is, or the R complex. Some people call it the reptilian brain. Some people do call it the amygdala, but the brain stem is a lot bigger than just the amygdala. And it's that, all we would say is it's that part of your brain that judges the world around you and decides very quickly, is it benefit or risk? Should we approach or avoid? So I model the brain based on this approach or avoid system. Then you've got a social part of the brain, the social mammalian brain, which in our evolution is around about, let's say, about 3.5 million years old. The brain stem is about 500 million years old. The social mammalian brain decides whether you're part of my group or not part of my group. Should I approach you socially or should I avoid you socially? Are you going to be a benefit to me and my group, or are you going to be a risk to me and my group? Whereas the brainstem is just in it for me. It's just deciding, are you a risk to me or a reward for me? Then you've got a 200,000-year-old part of the brain called the neocortex. It's by far the largest part of your brain. And that computes all kinds of things. That can hold risk and reward in the same place. It can think cognitively. But the amygdala is an aspect of a portion of the brainstem or the social mammalian brain, depending how you want to categorize it. But what we do know about this, so you can call it the amygdala if you like, just so long as it fits within that model of, is it making very, very simple decisions about approach and avoid?
Yeah. Yeah, so by the way, when I think about all of the research that kind of got popularized in that area in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It is kind of fascinating thing.
It's phenomenal. I mean, we've had ideas obviously for millennia around how the mind and the brain functions. We go back to Greek times. The Greeks thought it was kind of a hydraulic system and based on liquids. And if we go back to the time of Descartes, they believed it was kind of almost like a clockwork system. They knew it wasn't actually clockwork, but they thought it kind of worked kind of mechanically like that. Yeah. Well, now in the last 10 to 20 years, we have way better understandings of exactly how the brain works and the heuristics that it uses, the algorithms that it uses, and how those function with the neurochemicals and the network of neurons. So we understand a lot better because the affordability of the machines that can test that has gone down essentially. Having said all of that, we're still not entirely sure. The brain is still quite a mystery, though, as always happens with science, it becomes less and less of a mystery as we move forward. And the last 10 years, as you say, have been extraordinary in terms of our understanding.
Yeah, and the next 10 years, you can only imagine what's going
to
happen. It is. Anyway, I cannot even imagine it. Like sometimes I ask myself, like we know about all of those things from thousands of years, and then you see a period of time which is in the last 10 only, with so many discoveries, and then you go back and say to yourself, wait a minute, but we know about that part, and we exist from thousands of years. Yeah. And it's just, again, contrasting it to 10 years ago, and it's like, wow. Okay, so what are we expecting to see in the next 10 or in the next 50? Because if we are going with the same rate of discoveries, it can get quite interesting, I think. especially in terms of human behavior, which is I think everyone wants to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly expect what we'll see is for sure is just more accurate data on how we think the way we think and why we think, therefore, the way we think. Because ultimately, our ideas in the past around how we think and why we think were skewed by the way we think and how we think. So if you imagine, what a lot of current, brain science has come up with is, wow, we don't think how we thought we thought. Well, why was that? Because we were using our own human brains to think about the human brain. So the less we start using the human brain to think about the human brain, the more accurate we might get as to what is actually going on, rather than our skewed perceptions of what's going on. Our brain is a best guess machine. It's not a knowledge machine. And so we've been using a best guess machine to best guess how our best guess machine works. I think, as we go forward, as we start to use other machines to look into how we think and feel, we might get an extraordinary level of accuracy.
Yeah. So let's get into another place quickly, because again, back to the trainings, back to the consulting that you do. What are if you have to say, hey, these are the top 3 mistakes that I see with people that I work with and with all of those companies of all sizes in any industry, do you see something or some mistakes that people who are asked to present or are presenting because of their own will are doing that are very, very common in between industries and in between roles, in between company size? Like, do you see something that's common between speakers which you consider a mistake and you ask them to change?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a good generalization to say that most people that I might come across who need help with how they present, they ultimately feel that the data speaks for itself. It's that thing of going, well, you know what, I've got together this data, it's good data, the numbers will speak for themselves, the words will speak for themselves. And it's just not true. That's just not how the brain deals with numbers and language. So let's just take the idea of a number. We tend to think when we're delivering a number that it's already a value and not a number. So we take integers, the brain takes integers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it takes those and it puts them in a context and says, given the context, how do I value the number 2? It doesn't just go, well, this is the number 2. It goes, what am I going to make of that number 2? Is it a good number 2 or a bad number 2? Yeah. But it needs a context for that.
Yeah, and the
context is often the presenter. That's the thing. Now, I know a lot of the work that you do and a lot of work that colleagues of yours do and people listening to this may be about putting those numbers into a particular array, putting them within let's just say a design context, within a graph or a chart, or putting it within a language context, putting some words around it. And that's all very well and good because it does put it in a context. But even then, it hasn't necessarily fully given it the value in somebody's head. And they look to the presenter of that graph or chart or array of numbers, and they go, how do we value this? Because often they don't understand the numbers. They don't speak for themselves. They need a value imposed on them. Even when the value is imposed, the listener or the viewer doesn't really know how to evaluate that value. So they look at the listener, the presenter, the communicator, and they go, for example, is this person confident or unconfident? And I'll judge the numbers based on their confidence or unconfidence. Now, how do they know if somebody's confident or unconfident? Quite frankly, they don't. they have no idea whatsoever because they're not mind readers. So they look at the body and they make an assessment of that body within about a fifth of a second. They lock that assessment in, and now they judge all the numbers based on their assessment of that confidence. So I would say, as a good generalization, that's the mistake that people are making. They're going, okay, good, the numbers will speak for themselves. Well, quite frankly, if that was true, you'd just send the array of numbers in an email, and that would be your presentation done.
Yeah. So what about, so that, by the way, hearing that is a very, how can I say it? That is, let's call it this way. Let's rephrase it in the following way. Like, that sounds to me like a very, how can I call it, huge misunderstanding of how people actually think persuasion happens.
Right.
Yeah, like kind of very deep underneath everything, because that is not something that people, and the way that you explained it is for sure not how the normal person who is just being asked to present will kind of think about it.
Right. So they failed to see what I would say is the wiring underneath the board. They've failed to see the magic behind the curtain. They're at the processor level. They don't know how the processors are connected together underneath that board. They're at the front of the stage level. They don't know all the pulleys and the magic going on backstage that causes the illusions that I'm talking about here. So often what I'm trying to do with my clients is help them understand the real mechanisms of unconscious persuasion and influence going on in the background, which is those unconscious ones, and body language being a massive lever in that. So to further answer your question about, so what are the mistakes people are making? Well, let me give you a really simple and clear one. Often people will minimize their nonverbal communication rather than maximize it. That whole thing of like, well, be still and do nothing, or don't take up very much space, or just be a talking head and deliver the data. Stand behind the lectern or podium and deliver the data. Sit behind the table and be very, very still and deliver the data in a monotone, instead of going, well, what effect am I trying to have on the audience? And what would I have to do physically to most simply and powerfully get that effect? And so the first thing is, to get an effect non-verbally, is you must be seen. The more of you that is seen, the better. The less of you that's seen, the worse. So one of the first things I'll do with any client is get more of them seen. So if I can get them standing up, I'll get them standing up. If they have to sit at a table, I'll get them pulled back from the table, a hand span. So I'll get them to move themselves back from the table, a hand span away, so more of them is seen. I'll get them to move their their laptop away from them so that they're not blocking the audience's view of their non-verbal behavior with that laptop. I'll get them to use more expansive, bigger gestures, open out the body language into open, more expansive body language. So on the whole, most people are not being seen, and when they are being seen, they're minimizing what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay, so by the way, I don't know whether or not you received that one, but especially, I believe, here in the region at least, one of the most frequent questions that we get, and that I think many people get that are kind of in that industry, is, hey, I know that body language is very important. I've read something about that. I know a few things here and there, but I have a really important question. What should, and I'm quoting here some like random people that we have met with in the last few years. The question is always the same, and it is, what should I do with my hands?
Right.
So that is actually the way they ask it is always the same. So what should I do with my hands?
Yeah.
So if you have to answer that one, what is your recommendation? Like, how would you answer that one? Like,
yeah. So I'll give you
with my hands.
Yeah, I'll give you the clear answer in just one moment. But before I give you that clear answer, the interesting thing here is you have, in this situation, you have a human being asking what they should do with one of the most important organs on their body, the hands. Okay. It's the hands that make us as upright hominids supreme on the planet. It's our hands that manipulate the environment around us. The reason we have such a big neocortex is primarily because of these hands and the dexterous nature of it. It's a kind of a byproduct that we can then use that neocortex to think very smart. The reason we started down this route of having a very big neocortex was, first of all, the hands. So isn't it extraordinary when you get a human being going, you know what should I do with my hands? It's one of the most supreme organs a human being has, and you don't know what to do with them. That's pretty extraordinary. So let me tell you, and that kind of points to the panic and the conflict that they're in, and the stress of presenting, because the stress is so extreme, the brain doesn't know what to do with the most important organs on their body. It would be like a human being saying, how should I breathe during this? Or how fast what should my heart rate be during this? So clearly they're under stress and pressure when people are going, or they know that this presentation situation is stress and pressure. So here's exactly what you want to do. If you want to win trust and gain credibility and stand out, if you want to win that audience over on trust and credibility, you do open palm gestures at exactly navel height. So you open up your hands in a supportive upward gesture, and you present those hands at navel height, at belly button height, with open gestures as well. That is a signal across the planet of that you can be trusted. It's the signal of there are no predators in the room and I'm not a predator. It's a signal of there is low risk in the room and a high chance of benefit. It's a high benefit, low risk gesture. So open palm gestures at exactly navel height. And if you go to any of my videos and watch me speaking to an audience, you'll see that all the time, and you'll see me demonstrate that. And you'll see me show you exactly what happens if I don't do that.
Yeah. By the way, you actually demonstrated that in the Gartner keynote, which is, I believe, one of the better, even though that's a podcast, and it's kind of hard to see, which is the nature of the podcast itself. People will definitely link to that video, because people can visually see what this means and how quick it is indeed for people to understand and for people to see that the person in front of them is not, as you said, someone that potentially is a predator. Like, the change is so instant and it happens so quickly in your brain once you see the difference between where you put your hands and how you put your hands. It is seriously insane, as I like to say.
It's pretty stunning. And I mean, it was that discovery and the propagation of that really made my name in the area of nonverbal communication. Nobody else had come across that. Nobody else had thought of that. Nobody had written about that. And it just seemed to me that everybody had missed out on the absolute obvious, because those gestures are in art throughout our history. It's just people in business and politics in the main, and in communication in the main, hadn't looked at art and hadn't realized that artists have known this for thousands of years, and they'd missed out on it. And so you know, as the first person to start training people in this, I named my company after that effect and that gesture plane, and all the work that I do hinges around this understanding of that being the focal point of trust and credibility in terms of the visual image. And you're right, it happens extraordinarily quickly. Within about a fifth of a second, you get the effect. You can't stop the effect, even though I tell you what I'm doing, though your conscious mind can hold on to the fact that I'm manipulating you, your unconscious can't. So your unconscious gets manipulated, and then it starts to control your conscious brain and start to co-opt it into forgetting that you're being manipulated by me. It's an incredibly powerful technique. So yeah, go to that video and take a look at it, especially at the bit where I actually do deliver some numbers and use these gesture planes in order to influence and skew and manipulate your evaluation of the validity of the numbers, because that's pretty profound, how I can absolutely skew the narrative going on in your mind about me and the numbers simply by changing the horizontal height that I hold my hands.
Yeah, and when you say horizontal height, I remember that in one of your training programs, potentially in the books themselves, which is here to tell you that we still don't have them, but we will. And that is a recommendation for everyone who is going to listen to that. You also mentioned something that I personally haven't seen, or at least, no, I haven't seen it up until then. Talking about that horizontal plane of gestures, you, in one of the courses, you mentioned something that's like you have a different levels of where you put your hands.
Yeah.
You put them like very close to on what level you put them, and you draw some horizontal lines to show if your hands are on this level, it means that you are talking and you're speaking the truth. If it's on kind of chest level, you are speaking with passion. If it's on, going to, I believe, up until you get your hands above your head, right? Which shows ecstatic emotions and similar things, correct?
Yeah. So what it's about is, so that's the gesture plane system. Again, the book Winning Body Language was the first book to put that gesture plane system down. And really it was giving the world that system that made me unique in this area of presentation coaching and nonverbal communication. Yeah. And so what I did was to break the body into different horizontal planes of gesture, the horizontal levels that the hands go to. Now, that's not to say that if you speak with your hands at the truth plane, at navel level, that you will be truthful, or if you see somebody doing that they're being truthful. No, it's that you are most likely to trigger the idea in somebody else that you are being honest and authentic and truthful, and you're most likely to trigger the idea in you of that. If your hands go to chest height, for sure your heart rate and your breathing rate are going to go right up. And anybody looking at you, their heart rate and breathing rate are most likely to follow that. So you'll feel passionate. They'll feel that you're passionate. They'll feel passionate. Now, are you actually passionate? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily at all. So you can use these to, the same with being ecstatic. If your hands go up above your head, you'll go to the ecstatic plane.
Just to stop you here, that is something that I really want people to kind of imagine right now who are listening to this. Really imagine a speaker or yourself or both. When you present and put your hands above your head, what type of emotion it really shows. Because when I first saw it, I was like, this is so goddamn true. It is crazy. Like, it really is crazy when you see those speakers, or when you are the speaker and you watch yourself in a recording and you see yourself hand gesturing, let's call it, but above your head. The emotions are for sure not calmness and relaxation most of the times, right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, so what it creates is what we'd call a state. So you could have many different emotions within a state, but it'll create an ecstatic state, a high energy level state. Ecstatic, it comes from Greek ekstasis, to be outside of yourself. So literally you'll be so full of energy, it would be like your soul, your spirit is rising up out of your body. So they can often feel like very evangelical states. But you could be angry in that state. You could be in love in that state. You could be in fear in that state. You could be ecstatically in fear. You could be ecstatically joyful. You could be ecstatically panicked. I mean, it's not that it creates a specific emotion. It creates a specific state around that emotion, and the important thing is it triggers an audience very quickly into that state, because the audience understand very clearly how your body works. The reason is because they have the same body. All of us on the planet are roughly 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head in roughly the same place as each other. You know, it doesn't change a great deal in the majority of us. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head in the same place. Gravity works on you like it works on me. Our GI tracts work roughly the same. We're in the same battles with cold and heat. Ultimately. So our bodies work pretty much the same, human being to human being. And one of the things we all recognize in each other is the horizontal height at which our hands are held.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, I don't know if you know or if you know this, but it is like now it's already 40 minutes or 45 minutes already. I don't know when this happened. I really don't. Final recommendation, like final advices for everyone who is going to be listening to that podcast. Obviously, check out the YouTube channel, check out the website, check out that Gartner video, check out online courses. I would personally recommend all of those resources. And by the way, the people who are listening to this podcast know that we very rarely recommend things so openly and with such confidence. So guys, really take a look at what Mark and his team are doing, because it's really world-class stuff. But if you have to kind of give one final recommendation that's outside of your kind of content, and that recommendation is towards the people who are speakers, what would you kind of advise those current and upcoming speakers and presenters to do, or to learn, or to have in mind, or whatever? It's up to you.
Yeah, great. So I would recommend going back to Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I know many people out there who are speakers or who train speakers will have read that book, but probably they didn't do it. They probably read it, but they didn't actually do it. If you do what it says in the book, if you physically go out and do the things it says in the book, it's probably one of the greatest books ever written on influence and persuasion. But reading it won't be enough. You've got to actually get out and do what Carnegie says and test what he says to do, and you'll see the world fundamentally change around you.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't expect to come up with that one, but okay. That's obviously an interesting advice. Okay, so any other place where people and the listeners can find you and your team?
Yeah, sure. So find me on LinkedIn, and if you contact me on LinkedIn, I'd love to link in with you. And I post a lot of video content there as well. So it's a good place to hang out and see what I'm up to. So find me, Mark Bowden, on LinkedIn, and let's link up there.
Oh, that's great. Mark, thank you very much for being part of. You are our first external guest, so please feel special. Or at least I'm asking you to feel special because of that fact.
I do feel special. Don't worry. So I do feel special.
Yeah, this is the first. You are really our first external guest. I really hope that people took and will take all of your advices very into heart, because I personally know that those are extremely, extremely important things. Again, for everyone who is listening to all of that, I just want to spam a bit for ourselves. If you want to know more about 356 Labs, actually not spam at all. If you want to know more about 356 Labs or the presentation agency that I run, you can check it out and you can find all the information that you want to find all over the web. Like we are on any platform on the planet. So Mark, again, thanks very much again for spending the time and sharing all that wisdom. And what can I say? Hopefully we'll see each other at some point, not only virtually, but we'll be able to do something together. I'm really kind of looking forward to this happening in one way or the other.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back and talk again. So anytime you want me to chat to you and your audience, very open to that. And looking forward to seeing you in the future.
Well, that is now on the record. So expect me to reach you out after, let's say, a few months, so that
for sure.
So that we have a second episode, let's call it. Okay, so thank you very much again, and guys, everyone who was part of this episode, have a great day.